Welcome to the Marshall Pruitt Podcast, brought to you by Cooper Tires and the Justice Brothers. We have an episode of Catching Up With. This time it's with Matt Allen, producer of the brand new documentary debuting in full this weekend on Saturday prior to the Indianapolis Grand Prix, Drive Like Andretti, a beautiful look at the 1969 Indy 500 winner's life and career in the sport. Also the winner of the Daytona 500, class winner at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, IndyCar champion, Formula One world champion, just everything champion. So thankful that Matt was tasked for this documentary, and he did put together an amazing group. Matt, someone who has more Emmys than, well, how's this? He has more Emmys than I think all but one IndyCar team owner has victories at the Indy 500. So the NBC group, NBC Sports, chose the right people to put this together. Having seen a sneak preview of it, it is glorious. It's truly glorious. If you know Mario, you might know a lot of the stories. You might know a lot of the history, his cultural impact. But with what they've done here, I just found it to be a really beautiful and fresh feeling take on the man's life. So in the conversation we have here with Matt, we don't get into too much minutia about 16 minutes in, you say this and he does that. Want to leave most of this for you to enjoy in its entirety when it debuts on Saturday on NBCSN. There are segments that have been posted individually on YouTube, though, so if you can't wait till Saturday, just check out the NBC Sports Group's YouTube page. But just wanted to get into the process. So at least for those who do watch it, at least you'll have an idea of how Matt and his team came up with the decisions they made, how they decided on who to invite to speak about Mario's life and career, some of the decisions on where to focus this. Obviously, this is Indianapolis month, so not a surprise that this is a very heavy Indy-based documentary, but just trying to understand how they came up with what they came up with. Also interesting to learn, Matt's not a motor racing guy. Really had known the name Mario Andretti, but ended up learning about him firsthand. So some really cool and interesting things here in a brief, roughly 15-minute or so, 20-minute conversation with Matt Allen on our Catching Up series here on the Marshall Pruitt Podcast, brought to you by Cooper Tires and the Justice Brothers. Matt Allen, I'm so happy to see what we have coming here. I believe it's Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern, a documentary, NBC Sports, Mario Andretti, something that you have been a very busy man helping to bring to life. Before we get into the finer aspects of what's included, what folks can look forward to in this documentary, I'd love to start with the weight, the potential weight. We're talking greatest of all time personality, star, just international acclaim in Mario Andretti. Tell me about the thought process of tackling a project like this, knowing that this is an icon, and at least in terms of a finished product, you are going to be held to impossibly high standards.
Now I feel thoroughly intimidated, and maybe we should reconsider the debut. Thank you for the tremendous introduction, Marshall. It's great being on here. You deal with a subject like Mario Andretti, the name Andretti. I think, honestly, thankfully, I think I was fairly naive. I mean, I grew up using the name in lieu of the word race car driver, like a lot of people in my generation, without knowing what it meant. It's kind of like using any brand name, in place of the generic. And Mario is the name that means speed and racing and driver and going all out. But I really, honestly, I didn't know the story before. Growing up, the Indy 500 was not, Indy 500 motorsports racing was not something that was part of, my sports experience as a youth. So it really kind of came at it with fresh eyes, and hopefully that allowed us to see some things that maybe have been skipped over. And so, all we did was dig into the research and start trying to learn the story as best we could, and try to bring as much of the things that we found interesting, to life. It just sort of blew my mind. I had no idea this man is an Italian immigrant, a refugee, and the story of his racing career alone. And so, yeah, it was massively intimidating. But as soon as you meet the man, God, what an incredible soul, what an incredible person to work with, and what an honor that he allowed us and our team to tell his story. I mean, he could have said yes to anybody. I'm sure he had a lot of asks to do this, and we are incredibly appreciative that he said yes to us.
So one thing, Matt, in looking at this Drive Like Andretti documentary, is I assume that in your preparation, you went and looked at some of the previous documentary content. There have been a couple different things done on Mario, or Mario might have helped inspire to happen, both IMAX and you name it. There's a lot of great Mario content. There's an autobiography. Maybe there might be two. There's a lot of Mario content. Not all of it super recent. It's been the better part of 2 decades at least that I can think of since the last thing came out. How did you and your team go about choosing what to focus on, how to approach this, call it reintroduction, or to a wider scale, bringing this legend to light in the modern era without either going down roads that had been explored content-wise, stylistically? I know with everything you have done and all the awards you've won, the last thing you'd want to do is have anyone watch what you and your team created and say, boy, that sure looked like this other thing I saw 25 years ago.
Well, honestly, you try not to make it look like your last work. I think all you try to do is continue to improve, try to push your own boundaries artistically and creatively, and to push the team around you, and hopefully that leads to more more nuance and bigger leaps in the genre. But I think right away I watched a lot of the films. Let me just say, Super Speedway must be some of the best racing photography on a car, and to hear Mario tell the story of them bolting that camera to the front of his Indy car and still driving at speed is pretty incredible. But
amazing.
That was a great film to watch. I remember watching that as a kid at the Chicago Science and Industry Museum on their IMAX screen. So I sort of kind of came all back, and I was like, oh yeah, that guy who was in that movie. That was pretty incredible. But I guess the way we approach stories at NBC often is to say, get out of the way of the story. Let the story tell itself. And in the world of documentary filmmaking, when, God bless us, your subject is alive and your subject is amazing and an incredible storyteller in his own right and has the ability to take you on this journey, I mean, gosh, just get out of the way and use that. Let Mario, our working title for this film at the beginning was The Autobiography of Mario Andretti, just because it was simply, we said, how can we let Mario tell you anecdotally the stories of his life that inform the things that you know about him? And that's sort of how we started. And it kind of grew and developed from that point. So get out of the way, let the subject be their subject. Let the film be a first person film in as much as a way as is ever possible. And yes, we have some other voices and validators to give you a slight bit of context, but we wanted to avoid the kind of, I would say, quieter documentary style that is, maybe a little bit, in the case of Mario, we thought would get in the way of what was truly powerful about it, which was watching and hearing from Mario himself.
So looking at some of those choices that you made on guests, Ludacris, for example, and Ice-T, there are some names where you go, okay, in my, whatever it is, 6 degrees of separation or whatever, my Kevin Bacon game, I'm trying to come up with the linkage here. And I know that his grandson, Marco, obviously is a great intermediary, but there's some interesting choices here. You could have made some others. Just curious how you arrived at the decisions on those added voices to help either amplify or add context to Mario. Again, maybe coming to more of a 2019 audience than this real hardcore racing audience, which is probably not the narrow focus that you only wanted this documentary to appeal towards.
Well, from the very beginning, we look at these programs as an opportunity to introduce new and current fans and possible fans to the Indy 500, the IndyCar on NBC, and these films are designed to, with that in mind, with that approach as both a NBC Sports, and that hopefully will attract new people through a story that they didn't know. But when it comes to celebrities, we had some very specific goals of the type of individual we were hoping to get the participation of. Ice-T in particular was there to help us address the fact that Mario is referenced in music, dozens and dozens of songs, in ways that people, I don't think, even realize what the name means when they hear it. I mean, they know what it represents within the music. I ran into a friend of mine who didn't know who Mario Andretti was, and I played him an early version of something we were working on, and it had the Ice-T section in it where he was referencing the music, and he goes, "Oh, that's who that is? I know all of those lines. I didn't know that this was that guy." So it's sort of a chance. Each celebrity was designed to fit a spot that would reinforce an arc in the story and reinforce and help you explain something to appreciate. Ludacris is there because he has a relationship with Marco, and he can speak with authenticity and authority about the fact that Marco is a part of this family line, and he's an individual you will listen to. We could have picked a historian or an appreciative, somebody who appreciates motorsports, and they could have told you that. But would it have come across in a way that it comes across with Ludacris? Would the references to music and why Mario is being used have had the same validity if someone else, a random individual within the ecosystem of motorsports, had said that to you, or does it have more impact because it's Ice-T? That was our goal, was to make sure that our point came across to not only those that know his story, but those who have never heard it before.
Looking at, Matt, how we have something that it's beautiful. Again, it's glory. I appreciated the fact that...
I appreciate that. Thank you.
For lifelong racing folks like myself, it ticks many boxes that appeal to the hardcore person that knows the stats and such, but it's not so minutia driven. I mean, honestly, it's not driven by minutia, but there seems to be a good balance of honoring a massively diverse career, something that, again, has led to someone who is arguably the greatest race car driver of all time due to his excellence and achievements in so many forms of racing. Obviously, this is the 50th anniversary of his Indy 500 victory. This is debuting the month of May here in and around Indianapolis with NBC Sports as the broadcaster. So there's some definite heavy IndyCar emphasis.
Yeah.
Tell us about decision-making there. I mean, if I was given the reins to do this documentary, I'd probably spend too much time on his NASCAR and sports car career. But again, just curious, since you had just an amazing amount of riches to choose from in his career, why did you choose to weave in the directions that you did? And also tell us a little bit about the style of telling a story of a man compared to making a, quote, racing documentary.
Well, I think any film that you choose to make on any sort of a subject, in the end, you're telling a story to other humans. And I think we tell stories to each other for, a variety of reasons, but many of them are the same reasons. So we can see ourselves in the story. And therefore, if the story is too specific to a certain genre or too specific to a certain set of circumstances, I think in some ways you walk away not totally appreciating the journey that character went on, especially in documentary films. If you get too stuck in the details, it becomes a story about the details, not a story about the person. And I think, when it comes to like telling stories, especially in the first person, the way we did this one, the goal is that you come away with some sort of universal aspect where you go, wow, I wonder what I would have done if that had happened to me. And while I get how Mario took that and turned it into, I see how that influenced him to be like this. So at the end of the day, Mario's racing story is important, but because it is the reason we know who he is. But why, the question we kept asking was, why did Andretti become the name Andretti? So you could say, oh, because he won this race, and this race. But you could say why. You could take it a step further back and go, why did he win that race? What gave him as a human being the ability to surmount the odds that he encountered? Well, it's because he learned these lessons early on, and let's tell you about those lessons. And can that inform you in your daily life? Can you look at yourself and go, wow, I thought I was rough, but I didn't realize that occurred. So maybe I can get through this obstacle. I think any good story, we hope, gives us all a chance for a little introspection and perspective. And we can then also appreciate what others have gone through and look back at how we can improve our own lives. So hopefully the story it's bigger than racing. It should be. It's a human life. It's bigger than any single achievement. Mario's life is longer and stronger than any race that he won, quite frankly.
Let's close on this, Matt. So we have this beautiful thing. I'm not a betting man, but knowing that you have many Emmys with your names on them, at least prepare to clear a little bit of space, possibly, when we get to the next cycle.
We appreciate it, but you do these to make this. I think our honor is that Mario is happy with it. That's the true joy of this process.
Well, that's where I was leading here. Obviously, we don't want to give away everything that's there because we want folks to watch and enjoy the product that you've made. But if you could, let's close on just sharing any personal anecdotes from the filming process, interactions with Mario, things that you're going to carry with you, stories you might be telling to kids, parents, friends, and whatnot at barbecues for years to come.
The incredible shooting with Mario in Italy with our incredible team was unbelievable. I mean, it's an incredibly beautiful place on earth, and to be there with this legendary individual in close personal proximity, for 3 or 4 days straight, that was pretty incredible. I got to ride in a Ferrari with Mario Andretti. I don't know how many people get to say that. Along Foot to Pass. So that was pretty incredible. He did try to scare me. Did a little bit of a burnout coming through a roundabout, but luckily there was no Carbonieri around there, or how to pronounce it. But it was just a pure joy. And I think to a man, our production team that's had a chance to work on this, Samson Chan, our DP, Will Moss, our editor, Ellie Wright, our associate producer, and countless others, we really kind of secretly feel like we're part of the Andretti family now. And they might not agree, but having lived and breathed this family's story, we're incredibly passionate about it. And we hope that you guys kind of basically fall in love with Mario the same way we did, and his incredible journey, and take something away with it yourselves.
I think for those who have been happy to hear that NBC and the NBC Sports Group has become IndyCar's sole partner on the broadcast front, some of the questions of, okay, great, we know that we will be watching on-track activity whenever that happens starting in 2019, but what might be some of the additional benefits of the relationship? I hope folks appreciate that commissioning a project like this, airing a project like this, saying, hey, we need to do this. This is valuable. This is additive. I really do appreciate that in particular, knowing that at least in the past, these kinds of things haven't necessarily been done and presented to really benefit everybody in the sport. So not making you commit to anything for next year. I got a few ideas though, but just so happy to see that this you guys made Drive Like Andretti, and I am absolutely positive folks are, if they don't already know the Mario Andretti story, are going to love what y'all have brought forth.
We're incredibly appreciative of the opportunity. We come from a network that prides itself on storytelling and the ability to bring sports to life through stories. And like I said, I was not an IndyCar expert or even really beyond novice before this began. And I have to say, I have a tremendous appreciation for not only the sport, but those who have loved it for so long. And I hope that this passion now will transcend to more and new fans and refresh those who may have strayed from the sport in the past. And
that was Matt Allen, producer of Drive Like Andretti, debuting here May 11th, about an hour and a half before the Indy Grand Prix kicks off on NBCSN. So hopefully you enjoy that there, and hopefully you enjoy these little insider conversations. Aren't super long, aren't meant to be. That's our catching up with theme. And so I'll have some more here for you. One with Ryan Hunter-Reay, one with Elio Castro Neves, the director possibly of a different racing documentary that's come out. So going to try and fill in a lot of the heavy month of May content that is coming with some of these shorter visits. All right, I'm Marshall Pruitt. This is a Marshall Pruitt podcast brought to you by Cooper Tires and the Justice Brothers. Thank you for listening.